Welcome to another episode of the Takeaways Podcast. On today's episode, I'm with Renier Kriel, who is the founder of the Open Letter, a newsletter which chronicles the exciting things that are happening in technology and business in South Africa. On today's episode, we'll be talking about the intersection between tech and the media, both from a commercial and editorial point of view. Welcome to the podcast, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks. Great to be here.
So I want to start with you, right? You were previously, like a founder, and I believe you had like an exit, like you achieved an exit, and then, why then did you decide to pivot then, like to media via the Open Letter?
Yeah, out of varsity, I started a agency which built tech for other people, and at the time, it was quite important for the people who worked with me, for me, and myself to really be, close to what's happening in the ecosystem, and for various ideas. It was good. It was a good idea to show people that we work with that we know what's relevant and current and happening right now. I think it was also important for us to see what other people are doing in order to inspire and encourage new ideas. And, it's always fun, if you work in a tech space, to be able to have a conversation and share something interesting you've learned or thing that you see someone else did. So, about 20 years ago, as I was building this business, like one of the biggest needs I had was to find constant good sources of information about what's happening locally. Now, you could find that stuff in America and Europe, like, and South Africans often read those things, but there was nothing really in South Africa that really, scratched that itch for us. So, I always try to make Twitter lists, like this person shares something, but it was very unpredictable because those people weren't really incentivized to go and find good stories and share it. So a few years ago, in 2019, actually, someone introduced me to The Hustle, which is an American email newsletter. And the first Hustle I read, I just realized, like, this is something we need in South Africa. So if I combine the two stories, the one is my personal desire to know what's happening in the ecosystem, in the space, people being able to tell good stories, together with the fact that I saw how they built a business using email as a primary means and just how creative it was and engaging it was. We decided to start the Open Letter, and it's been bit more than 3 years. We end of the year will be 4 years old, so 3.5 years now, and we're having a lot of fun. And I believe scratching the itch for many people in the ecosystem that wants to know what's going on and also get their story out there of what they're building.
I think, the media, like in the startup ecosystem have always had kind of like a weird relationship in that, though one, like needs the other, there's like this, like a conversation that the only news that are covered, like in the media are like, like funding rounds or like negative news, right? How did you see this when you started the Open Letter? Because I mean, like, I've been a subscriber for like a couple of years now, and I realized that like your content is so like, like it's unique, right? Like it's not just like this startup like it raised this much. How did you think of the content strategy, and how has this evolved over the last few years?
So I think what's very important when you're a founder of any kind of business is, or not important, but what really helps is if you're actually solving for yourself. So I mentioned that, I had a desire to understand businesses better and really get behind why does something matters. Because I kept seeing articles in the news of going, this person raised that amount of money. And I kept finding myself saying, so what? So, our approach was to say, okay, let's dig a bit deeper. What is the opportunity? Why is this interesting? Why does it matter that someone is trying to solve a specific problem in a specific space? And I think those things are interesting for most people that are trying to solve problems in their workspace or interested in entrepreneurship, because the creative ways in which people go about solving problems often fuel ideas for me. So if I hear people are doing something interesting, it just encourages me and gets me thinking about how to solve problems that I'm working with. So I think it's taking that approach and saying, let's take it from that angle. So it's not a news angle, it's more a storytelling angle. And I think that's probably been some of the challenges in the past, is like, people have always approached startup and business news from a news perspective as opposed to a storytelling perspective.
While still on the conversation of the impact, I saw, like a post by you like on LinkedIn, and I think like a founder had done I think like a survey on, like, and placed it on the, like on the open letter, and they managed to get quite like a response on that. How do you think of the impact of the platform, right? How do you try to ensure that, like it makes a difference to startups and founders?
Yeah, I think something that I found fascinating is around 2019 when I got introduced to the hustle. I started looking into what's happening in the media space and tech and everything, and I think it was around about that time that I saw A16Z, which is it's quite a large VC firm in America. They actually started their own media division, and there was a lot of debate about it. They're like, why is a VC venture capital fund starting a media division? And I remember reading an opinion about someone saying the reality is they spend millions every year on wining and dining journalists to get them to write about their stories. And I found that fascinating, and I dug into this, and what I come to realize is just the power of media, right? And that is both whilst it's powerful, it's something that you need to manage with a lot of care, which I think that everybody's very much aware of in the world that we're living in. But that really triggered something for me, and I started realizing that a big problem in South African startup isn't only funding; it's actually people not knowing about people building things. And if we can start telling stories of people building things, and they can start getting customers, they'll make traction or get traction. And once they get traction, it will be much easier for them to attract funding. And then this whole thing would start moving in the right direction. So I think for the longest time, people have been asking questions in South Africa. If we want to see more startups, we want to see more success stories, we need more funding. We need more. That's the only topic I've ever heard people speak about. I've never heard anyone speak about, no, we need better media, right? So our approach was saying, let's do better media, because if corporates can find people, startups they can work with, perhaps they'll work with them, and then everything will get going. So that's always been our heart to go, how do we tell these stories so that they can get traction? So the startups we feature, we do daily email newsletters. That's 5 a week. We don't charge anything to feature those startups. We find them, they find us. They give some inputs, we do some research, we write it, we put it out there, and we get the most incredible stories from just literally got a WhatsApp now from someone said they've got we featured them I think yesterday. They've got some fantastic inquiries, they've got meetings booked, they've got people that want to partner with them on all range of things, and that's just so cool to hear, man, because this is the alignment I think that's been missing between media and the ecosystem for the longest time. It's like, our alignment is, let's get the startup stories out there so they can benefit. And then there's a lot of goodwill towards us for helping them. That's what we believe. And then in exchange, we can sell partnerships to people who want to, get the benefit of the goodwill that we've established with these businesses. And that's our business model. We have fantastic partners. They're companies that really help partners succeed, or the people who work with them succeed. And then there's good alignment. They want to see businesses win. We want to see businesses win. And we found a way to make all of this work.
The complexities of the media is that like it's so hard to kind of build like a business kind of like the model around just news and news and news and news, right? But at the end of the day, you still have to pay the bills, right? So apart from the partnerships, how have you kind of tried to think of this platform as a business?
Yeah, so I think the ad model isn't one I enjoy, because ultimately it's like it's a once-off thing. It's really hard to drive value. People miss it. Just haven't. It never really felt good. And I think another thing is, when you want to sell ads, simply just traditional ads like on your news website, you're competing with Google, you're competing with Meta, you're competing with TikTok. Those guys do it at scale. The reach is just enormous. Like you're going to be pushed down on a CPC and a CPM rate that's just not viable for media companies. And I think many media companies are facing that. So if you rule that out as a way to make money, as a first step as a media company, you go, well, we're not going to do that. Then the second one is you can dive into subscriptions. I think subscriptions is really hard to pull off in Africa. Firstly, for the scale, but secondly, also the amount of disposable income. So a lot of people look at America and they go, oh, this is what we do in the States. Doesn't work like that over here. I also think social media kind of democratized access to information to a certain degree, and AI has made it even worse. So getting people to pay for content is really, really tough. So that's the second option. I don't think that one is viable. And then the third one is really getting partners that want to engage this audience and sell to them. And I think one of the tricks is really understanding, well, what is the lifetime value for someone that makes a sale that is a partner of yours, right? So if that lifetime value is substantive, it's like often it's a B2B company, like B2C doesn't work typically that well. So if it's B2C, you could say it's 1,000 rand or 2,000 rand. That's often not enough to make the model work. But if it's B2B, and let's say for argument's sake, it's 500,000 rand lifetime value per customer. So if you deliver services, if you do high value work for people, then you can sell ads, or you can sell a partnership at a rate which can make it worth their while. So as an example, if they make 500,000 rand out of one customer, can we get them one customer if they partner with us for a year out of our audience through our events and through our newsletter? And if we think we can, then we can charge a price that's less than 500,000 rand, and everybody will be happy. And then it's all about convincing them that can happen and getting to work to make that happen. And that is through events, that's through engagement in a newsletter, through all kinds of other interesting tools and stuff we're building, or organizing webinars. Like we really got out of our way to make sure our partners get value, and they do, which is fantastic. But then it's not ads; it's a long-term relationship. It's a minimum 6-month commitment in which we execute a bunch of different things. And a trust with our audience is fundamental in this whole model to work. That's why we take the utmost care to make sure our partners are exceptional in the work that they do, and we make sure they offer value to the people they deliver the services for, and therefore we can with confidence tell our audience that you can work with these people. They're good people.
How complex is the execution? Because I see that like the team is still quite like incredibly lean. How do you kind of like ensure that you deliver the value that you promise to your partners? So
I think we started as a weekly email, which was chaos for us. We had like 3 people on this thing permanently trying to get one email out every week. We always knew we were going to go to a daily. We just didn't know when. Eventually, we tried twice a week. And then, going to 5 times a week, we annoyed a few people. They're like, you send me too many emails. But it was fun, and it was actually a business decision. So if you send 1 email a week, if you think about the composition of an email newsletter, right? You have some original content, you curate some things, you do a few other things, and ultimately you can maybe run 1 or 2 advertisements in that newsletter. If you do more than that, then it feels ad heavy. So if you do 1 email newsletter a week and you can only do 2 ads a week, you're kind of capped. And I mean, I say ads, but we run ads for partners, right? So if we want to promote a partner, we can promote 1 partner per week. So which means if we do 4 emails a month, we can promote 4 partners. But getting 4 partners wasn't enough to actually make the business sustainable. So we needed to find a way to go daily so that we can increase inventory, if you will, and in doing so, bring more partners on board and then grow the whole thing.
I've already stated that your content is quite rich and like unique. I like the memes, by the way; they're so funny. How do you plan around it? Can you give me just like a typical planning for like an email, right? How do you decide what news to cover, what meme to put in there, what poll to run, etc., etc.? Can you just run me through that process?
Yeah, sure. So we've got they're all parallel processes. So once a week I'll meet with the team and we'll figure out what we're going to write about the next 2 weeks, or we'll talk about what's coming up in the next 2 weeks, which main original feature will we do on which days. So in parallel to that, we run a daily process of curating things, both through our shorts and for around the web. And then we've got daily specific features. So we'll do specific things on a Monday, other things on a Tuesday, different things on a Wednesday. But we know what those are. And they run a parallel process as well to kind of put that together. And then Alvon, who's one of my co-founders, is just really good at putting it all together. And then, we either find the meme as we build it, or we'll do it at the end. We'll just say we have a WhatsApp group and messages fly with ideas and laugh or cry emojis, and then we makes it into the newsletter. And then we normally send like what we call a test email out around about midday. That's going to go out the next day. And then Jason, who's my other co-founder, will do like a, test all the links, check everything is fine, give some feedback, and then we'll finalize it and schedule for the next morning at 6. So it's quite an operation to have a daily newsletter. Like it's AI definitely makes it easier because it can help you just move quicker. But the content we generate is original. You can't find it on AI, so you have to find it. You have to write it, and AI can help you polish it. But you can't outsource that job.
In terms of traction, I think right now you I think get like 40K plus, right? Like in terms of the audience. Can you share more on that, on how like it has been growing, like in terms of the audience and like like click through rates and open rates, etc., etc.
Yeah, so we've actually over the years had I think close to 70,000 people who sign up, but we list them. So ultimately, people can look at a vanity metric where they think it's important to have a lot of subscribers. That's not unimportant. What's way more important is like, do you have engaged subscribers? So I actually, having learned a lot about newsletters over the last 3 years, if you pick a specific niche and you get a high amount of engagement, you can make a substantial amount of money from 5,000 subscribers. It just depends who those 5,000 people are, what they're interested in, and how engaged they are. So, I mean, if I get 100 CEOs to join my newsletter and I share things about business, and all those CEOs read that email, I promise you I can make a lot of money from that. So it's not really about the amount of subscribers, it's rather who they are and how engaged they are. So we list them quite aggressively. If you don't open a newsletter for 90 days, I'll send you an email to go, do you still want this? And if you don't reply or respond to that, then we remove you. We unsubscribe on your behalf. And just from an email perspective, that does a few things. It allows us to always end up in the primary inbox, or at least gives us a good chance to do that, to avoid spam filters, to have a good domain reputation. So that's something that's been super important for us to maintain. So get the right people. So we've been maintaining more than 40% open rate over the last, since we started. About a 5% click-through rate, which is pretty good. So both those are substantially higher than the industry averages. So very proud of that, and trying to maintain it around that level. So yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons for that.
Just for people who just don't get like how complex it is to have like a click-through rate of like 5% like on a newsletter. I used to work like on newsletters a lot, like in my past life. Being able to consistently get like a click-through rate of like close to 2%, like is considered such like a win. So if you do like a click-through rate of like like a 5%, it means that like your engagement rate is really, really like impressive. I want to talk now. I mean, the open letter, like initially it served more of like an audience of like like startups, like strictly that. But I think now you have evolved more towards like like business. What informed that, and how is that going?
Yeah, I think something we didn't think through when we started was where will the audience grow? And we quickly realized like there are a few thousand people, maybe 1,000 people or 2,000 interested in startups in South Africa, like all building startups, investing in them, working in that space. It's not a lot, maybe it's a bit more, but we knew that audience was super capped. But something I realized very early on is there was a CEO of a very prominent South African company who signed up to our newsletter, and he read every single one of them, and he replied to me, he's reached out to us. He loves what we do. He's spoken at one of our events. And that made me realize, wait a minute, but I mean, this isn't only for startup people. This is like anybody interested in tech and trying to understand where South Africa is going. So the open letter now, is actually quite spread across all business sizes. In fact, when we do a breakdown and understanding of our audience, we have about 100 people per big bank in South Africa that read the newsletter. So 100 people from Standard Bank, about 100 from FNB, about 90, I think, from Capitec. Same with like ShopRite. We have, I think, 70 people from ShopRite reading. So we've got lots of people from corporate reading. and then all the way down to people that are just starting out and are working by themselves. So I think something that's also interesting is the audience size is more than 65% of more than 12 years work experience. So it's older people, it's people that are typically in decision making or management positions. And that is a really good demographic to engage daily, because you can imagine, getting the attention of those people is worth quite a lot. We talk about startups, but it's not because it's a startup newsletter. We talk about startups because we're talking about the shape of South African business and where things are going. And often you can see that when you look at where money's flowing, if you look at where people are spending time, what problems they're trying to solve. It's in a free market system. It often gives you an indication of where the economy locally is heading. And I think a lot of people find that interesting and get value from that.
If there's one thing that I've picked up from our conversation so far, is that you are really in tune, like in terms of the numbers, like in the metrics and everything, you are really like in tune with, where the audience is headed, etc. How important is that in trying to build and grow, like a newsletter product, like being able to know all the metrics, like, like your lifetime value of all those kind of metrics? How important are they in scaling?
I think it's very hard to do it without it, because you're flying blindly. And even with all those metrics, there are things that are blind as well, right? I mean, I've opened the email before and never read it. So it's always those kind of things as well, where you go, it's not 100% exact, so it's important to use the metrics that you have and take the signals that come from it and understand if things are healthy or they're going in the right direction. We also think a lot about AI and what AI is doing to the world, I think, as with any industry. And because of that, we really pay close attention to numbers, open rates, engagement, also how long people stay, what they do, where they come from when they sign up, in order to get a better view of understanding where we should go with our content and how we can keep people engaged in the era where, you have any kind of information on your fingertips, or at least the perception that you have any kind of information at your fingertips.
Also, like as a side question, right? Why did you decide to settle on email? I mean, you could have gone the blog route, you could have gone the podcast route, or any other routes. Why did you decide to do it via email?
I think it's got to do with email being the only channel left probably on the internet that you can still own the audience. The other one is SMS, but I mean, SMS is not really a very engaging channel, and to a large degree, a lot of people ignore SMS. So, and I mean, you can do WhatsApp, but you're still paying. So, and you're constantly gated by a gatekeeper, a private company that has a financial incentive. So, and what's funny is, even though you can publish anything on the internet, like if you have hosting in a domain, you can put it out there. Access to the internet is pretty much governed by big tech. So, for someone to find you, you need to either pay for ads, or you need to spend money to get the algorithm, but you need to keep spending money to keep people coming back to you. So it's just this money pit that never ends. But email allows you to engage with someone irrespective of whether you pay for that moment or not. You can email them every time of the day. So it's much more a value exchange deal, where if I add value to my readers, they won't unsubscribe and they'll keep reading, and through that I can monetize. And I mean, to put it in perspective, like we've got, I don't know, 15,000 followers on LinkedIn on the Open Letters page. If we make a post there, we get 500 to 1,000 impressions on the post, not engagements, impressions, right? We send a long form email every day. That's a 10-minute read with multiple content pieces, and we get 12,000, 14,000 unique engagements on that email. So, and I can almost guarantee that I'll get between those numbers tomorrow, and I'll get between those numbers on Monday. So what's become really difficult on the internet is to engage the people you want without paying, because you can't guarantee it. The algorithm will just do whatever it wants. But what we're doing with email is actually found a way to guarantee that we get that engagement, and then having to steward the trust of being continuously adding value and doing good content in order for people to not unsubscribe.
I want to speak now on the sheer amount of skill that you guys have managed to have over the last 3.5 years. I mean, right now you have like events, you also have like a community platform, you also have like a couple of like the other initiatives, right? I want to start here, right? How do you build a community around just the email? Because I believe that, like a lot of the community that goes to events, that like engages in like your founder initiative, come from the email, right? How do you build, how do you get people to go from the inbox to your events and other initiatives?
Yeah, so I think a very important thing to do when you're building a media company, or actually any brand, is to build a personality for the brand, right? And the easiest way to do this is to make that an extension of your own brand. I'm a bit of an internet geek. Grew up in an era where the internet became big. So, memes, being online jokes, Star Wars jokes, those kind of things are like par for the course for actually all three of our founders. And we intentionally decided from day one, let's make this brand as personable as possible. Like, let's engage, let's make jokes, let's make it fun, let's make it entertaining, whilst always keeping it sharp, factual, to the point, etc. Right? And when you do that, when a brand develops a personality, then it's almost as if it's easier to get buy-in from people to do things you want them to participate in, and it would add value to them. So then it becomes easier to do an event and sell out tickets. But I mean, to be entirely honest, when we started events, we didn't sell out tickets. We sold 50 tickets, or we sold 35 tickets, or whatever. It's only after showing people that we can execute events well that we started getting more and more traction. And now we have a lot of repeat people that don't miss any of our events because they love it and they get good value from it. But it took a bit of time to build that up. But the one reinforces the other, which I think is really important. Like someone that reads our newsletter, that likes it, that now comes to our event, meets us in person, has a good time, actually likes reading the newsletter more now, tells more people about it, and then that cycle just reinforces itself. So that's kind of how you build a community, right? You continuously add value to people and then engage them in a personable way. And through that, the value keeps growing.
And then, how do you kind of like try to ensure that the growth is like sustainable growth? Because I imagine that writing like an email is not like as complex as like trying to plan an event, right? How do you ensure that this growth, like, it happens in like a sustainable way?
Yeah, so I think something that made the biggest impacts on our events is actually hiring someone literally a year ago to come on board and just look after our events, and she's been amazing. Really took it for us to the next level. Because we saw it as a business line that does not only have a lot of potential to make money, but to actually generate a lot of connectedness in this community, which then, like I said, becomes a flywheel that supports a lot of other things that we do. Also, from a sponsorship perspective, it's for certain brands, it's way easier to unlock financing for events than it is to unlock financing for media. Like media spend is not a high on some companies' agenda. So if you have a mix between events and media, it's a good spend, a good mix to actually get to a lot of different kinds of budgets. But not having, to your question, not having someone focusing on that is not ideal, because it is quite complex to pull off events at a certain level of quality.
I want to get like your view on, in say like in 3 to 5 years, right? How do you see yourselves as the open letter playing a role in the growth of the ecosystem, like in South Africa? I mean, I already did like a reference to the founder who managed to get like like a significant amount of traction. How do you think of this impact, and how is it going to grow over the next few years?
Yeah, I think continue to tell the stories of people, continue to connect people, continue to help people find great service providers and partners that can help take their business forward. I think the impact is already massive, and that's one of the main things I love about this business is when you can do something that has a positive impact on other businesses or other people's lives, but that is not your actual primary objective. Like a lot of people do business to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's such an honor to be involved in something where we can help people and we don't have to make money from helping them. We actually find other ways to generate revenue, which I think is great. So I think the impact has been great. I think the impacts will just increase over time. as we keep telling stories and increasing the scope or the size of our list. I think something that's been very interesting and quite unique to our events, like I've been involved in a startup space for 20 years now. Most of the startup events I go to in South Africa are pretty good. But the audience typically is startup people. So it's people building startups, it's investors that want to build and invest in it. These events typically don't feature other businesses. They don't feature small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and sometimes not even any corporates. So our audience is different in the sense that although we have a lot of startups involved, it's actually mostly people building tech-enabled businesses or working for a company that's a tech-enabled business, which then means we bridge this gap between businesses that are starting out and businesses that have money to buy from these startup businesses. And then economic activity can take place. So, or they know people, right? So startup people know people, but people who work in businesses know other people, specifically older people, they've been long enough to meet a lot of people. So traditionally, startup space, more young people than older people. Our audience probably more middle-aged, which means there's a cross-pollination there between not only age but industries and business sizes that results in a lot of positive business activity.
From like a product POV, I mean, you started just a newsletter where you sent out like an edition once every week, and then it becomes twice a week, and then it became like a daily newsletter, and then you had events and other other initiatives. How do you see your content and product evolving from here onwards?
So we've got the founder community, which is amazing. I do believe the future with AI, is not social networks. I think it's smaller communities around specific topics. I think the other thing that it's very definitely changing as well as owned audience is important. Like I mentioned that earlier, being able to communicate with the audience that you have is super important. The email allows you to do that. And I think the third one is events. I think agents will spend more time on the internet on our behalf, and therefore we as humans will actually end up spending less time on the internet. So where do we want to spend our time? We want to spend our time in communities, and we want to be spending our time at events. So those are the three areas that we're focusing on: owned audience as a funnel into communities and into events. So we've built our own events platform. We're building that out, onboarding more customers to use our events platform, which is amazing. That's become a startup in itself. And then the community that we've built for founders, the Founder Collab, building that out as well to, create a great space online for people to meet other people that are also building businesses, learn with them, grow with them, and do more in less amount of times that they would by themselves. So communities, owned audience, and events is definitely where it's at. We're definitely building out those products into the future as AI has a bigger impact on everything we do.
You guys are pretty much like a startup at this point, right? You're like a media startup. Are you out there like trying to raise to scale more? Are you like kind of trying to like see who you can acquire, etc., etc.? How are those conversations going?
So we bootstrapped everything up until now, and by bootstrap doesn't mean like we had a nest egg or whatever. We have a separate business called the Newsletter Company that actually does newsletters, B2B newsletters, or business newsletters for B2B companies, specifically useful in the nurture flow to drive value for them. So we do newsletters for 5 other companies, and we've got capacity to grow that. And that's become a business in itself. That's actually financing a lot of what OpenLetter is. OpenLetter should be, as a standalone business, become profitable this year, which means we can then split the two businesses, and one can be an agency that does newsletters by itself and not having to necessarily sustain the OpenLetter. And then we're building it. I do think owned audience, like I mentioned, will be interesting. So we'd probably be interested in exploring someone acquiring the OpenLetter down the line. But for now, we're having a lot of fun, and just loving the contribution we can make in the ecosystem and seeing how it plays out.
As we close off our conversation, right? I mean, the sheer amount of work that you guys have done and the value that you have brought, like into the ecosystem in just 3.5 years has been incredible to say the least. I mean, like it's so hard to grow like a newsletter from, where you guys started, especially in such a niche industry, right? In the next few years, how do you see the tech media space evolving, both like in South Africa and in like other, like markets that you guys are going to explore? And yeah, what's your overall thoughts on that?
It's evolving. I mean, if any tech media company still holds on to old business models, the traditional ones of just selling ads or clicks or even just plain subscriptions for content, I think those models are going to completely die out. And if people don't adapt, those businesses would just die. So it's really about the ability to convert that audience interest that you have into revenue through either your own products, your own services, or finding a creative way to bring value for partners. So I think that's super important. Something I do think is going to happen if you look at the age of the demographic in the business world. So you've got 40, 45-year-old people that grew up with computers and the internet. That's people like myself. If you go a bit older, let's say 50 to 65, you have people that have used the internet and computers and tech for large part of their professional lives, but they didn't really grow up with it. So the generation that I'm in is one that I would say is probably the first one that's completely tech native because they grew up with computers, right?
Yeah.
The current publications in the business space aren't tech native publications. They were started by people that are older than the generation that I would say is tech native. So typically, if you look at the angle and approach and how they cover news, business news, or business insights, it's typically from a financial perspective and not from a tech lens. The reality is that all companies these days are tech companies, and even more so going forward, all of them will be tech companies and become even more tech companies. So the business news that we see today, I think either will change to be more tech focused or they'll just disappear because the relevance of business news in the future that doesn't have a tech lens is just going to completely fade out. As these older people retire, the next generation that's going to step into those leadership roles, they'll just insist that business news needs to be tech focused. So that's something we're gearing for and planning for. Like at the moment, we have a very specific category, but we very, very well might, over the next few years, evolve into becoming, full blown business news, which could result in us launching on different platforms, doing different things, taking on other people, other competitors. At the moment, I don't really think we have competitors. There's no one in the space doing what we're doing. But then we'll literally go and compete with existing business publications, but doing so from the fact that we are tech native and we put a tech lens on everything.
And I guess you just like answered the other question that I had in that, how are you planning to grow, like in terms of like like your coverage, right? Like you are like in terms of like trying to get more into like like business publication, etc. But are you also planning to grow beyond just like Mzansi, because there's like a lot going on like in other markets, like not just like in Africa, but like like in other markets where I feel like your product could actually fit in there?
In the beginning stages, a lot of people asked us why don't we do a continental wide, like an African focusing, and I think there's a few reasons for it. Firstly, anybody that's been to Africa would know just how different the different regions are, like not only economically but culturally, and just there's so much nuance. I mean, it's so different and diverse. So that's the first thing. So trying to do one publication that covers all of that is really complicated. The second thing is I personally, my passion is South Africa. And whilst, I'm not saying I'm not passionate about Africa, but I'm primarily passionate about South Africa. And as such, if you give me African news or African insights, there's a big part of me that feels like there's no relevance to me in South Africa understanding what the problem someone's solving in Kenya. Like it's very limited. Not that it's not interesting, not that it's not perhaps important for the continent. It's just not something I would consume on a daily basis. I'd engage with that every now and again, but not on a daily basis. So that's why we focus on South Africa. What I do find interesting is there are definitely more similarities in SADC. So Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique, South Africa have a lot more in common than the rest of Africa. And there are people building really cool things, solving really interesting problems, and very much applicability cross-border wise sometimes. So we've actually recently had conversations and said, okay, let's extend the reach a bit, and I wouldn't mind covering someone doing something interesting in Botswana or Zimbabwe or a neighboring country, because I do think there is relevance, there's cultural similarity, and that's something we'll do. In terms of other things we're thinking about is unlocking different verticals. We recently launched a new newsletter called The People Insider, which is specifically focused on the people/leadership vertical, sharing latest happenings, insights, observations, opinions around how the workplace is changing. That's been growing nicely. I think we've got 1,500 subscribers there after 6 weeks. That's not going to be a massive audience newsletter, but that's going to be a very valuable audience newsletter. So building that out, and I can imagine you can do a lot more. You can do a personal finance one, you can do an investment one, you can do a private equity one, you can do, there's different verticals you can explore there, and use your growth engine of the open letter to actually see those ones and grow them, to eventually own multiple properties around different interests, which would allow for a lot of different monetization opportunities.
As we close off, I would like to congratulate you and the team on the incredible work that you guys have done over the last few years, and I'm sure that the work that you're going to do like in the next few years is also going to be like incredibly like impactful. So yeah, and also I would like to wish you all the best in all that you'll be doing like in 2026 and beyond, and really appreciate your time and your insights and everything else.
Awesome, man. Thanks for the kind words, and thanks for having me. I go check out what we do. Come tell us your stories of what you're building, and we can see what we can do to help get the word out.
Yeah, man. I'm said I'll be sure to do that, man. I really appreciate you, Renier. Cheers, man.